Welcome to the Detroit Lions Lone Wolves podcast. Christian, we made it. The offseason is almost over. This weekend, the Detroit Lions will have a chance. Detroit Lions on SI, all the reporters will be out there at Allen Park at the team's performance center to watch the Detroit Lions. We'll talk to Dan Campbell, have an opportunity to check in with some of the players that maybe are going to be there, maybe won't. We'll get an early sense of the injury updates regarding a lot of the players on the Detroit Lions roster. It's an interesting time. It felt like really, Christian, the offseason just flew by. But thanks, everybody, for your continued support of the Lone Wolves podcast. Thanks to each and every PR person or individual that invited me and others affiliated with Detroit Lions on SI for interviews. It's been a fun, definitely a fun offseason to kind of preview what's going on, look at offseason narratives, take a look at players that are going to be expected to step up. But really right now, Christian, it's a very fascinating time in the world of the NFL. On the heels of the NFLPA, maybe working with the NFL to kind of not reveal certain information to players, it's an interesting time for the union. And it's an interesting time for second-round pick Tate Ratledge. Right now, as we're talking, 30 of the 32 second-round picks have not signed. And so everyone's wondering. And so this week I've been online checking out what people are talking about. And one of the early concerns is, Chargers wide receiver didn't show up, held out. And now everyone's wondering, is the NFLPA, is the union going to encourage the solidarity among the second round picks? It's real interesting too, because Tate Ratledge, second round pick, number 57 overall, I believe. And he's a player that probably is waiting for a bunch of other players, probably most notably the Seattle Seahawks safety. Does he eventually get the guaranteed contract? Should the Lions, maybe we're going to talk about it, should the Lions maybe make a move in advance of that and step up before others get signed and take care of Tate Ratledge? But Christian, at the time, we're talking just before Tuesday afternoon, and we're wondering and speculating, do you think by the time Wednesday rolls around, I kind of have a feeling like the Lions will take care of it probably Wednesday when the rookies report? It would be a little bit surprising to me if the rookies show up on Wednesday and he doesn't sign. It seems like it's a move that could come, but there are some factors that could prevent Tate Ratledge from showing up. He could be showing solidarity with the second round picks, saying, hey, we want our guaranteed money. The first couple picks of this year's draft, they got it. The Texans stepped up. The Browns stepped up and gave second round picks guaranteed money. It's a complicated situation, but would you be shocked as maybe I would be if Tate Ratledge held out?
I think that in today's age, right, the guaranteed money is such a big thing. And I just don't see any of the second round picks backing down from their demands. And I do think that there is obviously a possibility that Tate Ratledge holds out. And I think if he doesn't have a contract when the report date happens, I think we should all start to kind of brace for that possibility. I do think that Tate Ratledge holding out would be a worst case scenario for the Lions, because let's face it, with all the turnover on the interior of your offensive line, you need Tate Ratledge to be there. This is a guy that you cross-trained at center for OTAs and rookie minicamp. This is a guy who could be your starting center week one. He's going to be in that competition. You need him to be there when you start training camp practices. And so for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions give him that guarantee, just because in the grand scheme of things, your second rounder's contract isn't going to eat up a ton of the cap space. And the Lions have been very good about taking care of their guys and meeting their demands. And I think that everybody kind of recognizes where this thing is going. And it's that your second round contracts are going to be eventually, whether it's this year or next year or 2 years from now, they're going to wind up being fully guaranteed deals. And I think with the state of the salary cap, you're going to see that continue to grow. And a couple of years from now, you may have third rounders getting guaranteed contracts and so on and so forth. And I think that with the way the world is, I don't think there's any avoiding it. And I think the Lions should just kind of pony up and do it now. It's not going to be something that takes a huge chunk of your cap space. So if you're the Lions, let's make sure our guy is there, right? Because if he's not starting at center, he's probably going to be starting at guard in some capacity. So you need him there. It's not a huge financial commitment when you look at some of the other contracts that the Lions have doled out already. And for that reason, I think the Lions should just pony up and get it done.
It's interesting. Do you think the Lions step up and do it first? Because a lot of this situation kind of has to deal with, hey, teams setting precedent. And I think you took a look at it, or I asked you, last year's number 57 overall pick got around 50% or 60% of his contract fully guaranteed. I could see now, I understand your point of view in regards to, yeah, talent deserves to be paid. But from the team perspective, you recognize now the further along you go, the higher it is, the tougher it is to get players that you know are going to be productive. And if you start fully guaranteeing dollars, that might also impact motivation. It's just naturally speaking, hey, if you guarantee somebody a lot of money, are they going to want to reach their potential to even get that second contract? Now, I do think a player like Tate Ratledge has been fully vetted, and he's going to be a gamer, somebody that's going to be somebody to work hard. But do you see the other side of it too, where teams are like, man, if we start this precedent and we have ownerships and we have maybe potentially people that are higher up, like the NFL commissioner reportedly maybe even discussing, hey, we got to potentially look at how we're compensating these players, maybe not in the interest of giving them more, because like you just said, if they set the precedent of giving second round picks fully guaranteed dollars, then the next wave is third round picks are going to be like, I'm not going to show up. So do you think the second rounders show solidarity all the way through? We're going to find out pretty quickly just how cohesive the second round pick are, just how cohesive these young players are in regards to sticking together, especially if a couple days pass and a lot of people don't report. Do you see a scenario in which Tate doesn't accept a fully guaranteed contract, maybe gets 80%, 90%, but not fully? I think the Lions, like you just said, should just have already stepped up and just set the precedent. And once Tate gets his fully guaranteed dollars, it might unfortunately ruffle some feathers, but this is competition. You need Tate Ratledge in camp.
Yeah, I think that he's going to get a fully guaranteed contract. And the reason I think that is the market's been set, right? The market for being a second round pick in the 2025 NFL draft has been set, and it's fully guaranteed. And I think that if anybody's got an issue with it, you need to take it up with Andrew Berry and Nick Caserio, the GMs of the Browns and the Texans, who have already done this with Jaden Higgins and Carson Schwessinger. Like that's who everybody should be looking at right now in terms of this. So I think when you look at the state of the draft and what these picks are getting, the market's set. The market is set. It's fully guaranteed contract. And I know that each pick has its slot value, but there's been 2 second rounders to sign, and both of them signed fully guaranteed contracts. So that's the market right now. And I think that if you're a player, I'm not going to sign anything that doesn't have a fully guaranteed, because I'm a second round pick. And I get that, like I said, there's slot values, but I think that the standard of getting a fully guaranteed contract being a second rounder has been set for this year's draft. And as a result, I think that you're going to see a lot of, if not all these guys, take a seat on the sideline until their contracts come through with that fully guaranteed 100% on their contract and written in that terminology. So I think that if you're the Lions, just get it done. Just get it done. This is the market. You got to get it done. There's no changing it, and you got to get it done. Like I said, not a huge cap hit, not going to be something that burns you or stops you from making other moves and other extensions. So I think if you're the Lions, just get it done. And find Tate Ratledge, I'm not signing anything that's not fully guaranteed.
Fully guaranteed. Times are changing, and it's interesting because, like we said, on the heels of the NFLPA maybe showing a little weakness and working together with the NFL to withhold information regarding the results of a collusion case, really has kind of raised a lot of eyebrows in regards to, wait a minute, NFLPA should be helping the players, not working with the NFL to keep information that's really relevant in regards to contracts. And so, look, we're not saying that the NFL is colluding to keep contracts down, but it's a natural result of, hey, employers don't want to pay as much guaranteed to NFL athletes, especially when the precedent hasn't been set. It's been set. First round picks get guaranteed dollars. Second round picks have been slotted. So there could be a stalemate. So I'm hoping at the time of this recording, Tate Ratledge has not been signed as of yet, as of Tuesday, but maybe by the time this airs, this could be resolved, because it's important for Tate Ratledge to be there, especially with the competition that he's going to be part of with Graham Glasgow, and especially every rep at center that he can take if he's there. That's why I feel like he knows that just how much of a detriment that could be to impact the Detroit Lions in that sense. So I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. But now turning our attention, it's here, training camp. Sunday's going to roll around, and we're going to be out there at training camp to be able to check out practice. And it's an opportunity now to kind of look at how the Detroit Lions are going to shake out in regards to a lot of position battles. I think one of the early things I'm looking forward to is the coaching battle between John Morton and Kelvin Shepard, the mixing and matching of, look, and to set the preface and to really understand, the first couple of practices are going to be not in pads. They're going to be, there's going to be competitive periods, but there's going to be some time where I think in the second week of camp is when the pads fully come on. But we will have a chance to start to see the young rookies get out there, and hopefully we get a chance to see more of Tesla and Tyleik Williams, because we didn't get a chance to see him that much in the spring. So I'm excited for seeing the rookies, the developmental players, and some camp battles that I think a lot of people are paying attention to. And I think for sure you are, just like myself. You're definitely going to be fascinated with the defensive ends and the defensive line. What are your early things that you're going to be definitely watching for and want me to report on at Detroit Lions training camp?
I think it starts and ends with these position battles we got going on, right? And I think that you'll start to really get a feel for where the Lions are at in their position battle on the offensive line when the pads come on. And when they start going fully padded and you can see these guys really work in one-on-ones and team settings, like then you'll start to get a feel for, okay, is Graham Glasgow taking the lead at center? Is Tate Ratledge, if he's there, is he a guy who's stepping up and showing a firm control of everything that comes with playing center? I think right now you should be planning for the interior offensive line to be very young. You'll obviously, Glasgow's a veteran, but if he gets the center job, you could start Mahogany at the left side and Ratledge at the right side. You got two guys with a combined 1 year of NFL experience as your starting two guards on the interior of an offensive line that has been the identity of the Lions for the past several seasons. You talk about Brad Holmes building this team through the trenches through the draft, and now you've got a couple of young guys going out there. And while they have a lot of belief in those guys, there's nothing that replicates getting out there in a game setting. And so training camp practices are going to be extremely pivotal for the interior offensive line. I think the defensive line is another one worth watching. Didn't get to see a ton of Tyleik Williams during the offseason program. He's another guy. When the pads come on, that's a player to watch. Amin Hassanin is a guy that I've talked about a lot on this podcast. He's a guy I really like the fit with him in Detroit. I think that he can be a guy that can surprise some people. How do Marcus Davenport, Josh Pascal, Al-Quadin Muhammad look? If those guys are good, then maybe you're feeling pretty good about that edge rotation opposite Aiden Hutchinson. If not, I think those calls for Zadarius Smith are only going to get louder if the Lions don't bring him in right away. Obviously, there's been a ton of buzz there. He's made comments about wanting to be in Detroit. Brad Holmes has talked about staying in touch with him. That's a guy who that signing of him is always going to be looming in the background anytime something happens with the edge guys. And then at cornerback is another interesting position for me. Obviously, your two guys at the top, DJ Reed, Terrion Arnold, those are the two guys you want to go into the season starting. But what does Ennis Rakestraw give you? What does Avonte Maddox give you? What does Amik Robertson give you? Is he a guy who can bump outside like he did at the end of the year last year and did pretty well? So a lot of intriguing battles kind of on the fringes. You know, if you were to write a two-deep depth chart, you'd have a lot of those names set in stone. But on the fringes, like that backup, that number 2, number 3 type spot, there's a ton of battles like that going on this year in training camp.
No doubt. And you ran through a bunch of names that it's going to be important to monitor, and make sure you stick with Detroit Lions on SI as we bring you daily reports, what the players are saying, who's rising, who's falling, who's potentially going to be a darling that could maybe make the team as an undrafted free agent, as the team has kept at least one undrafted free agent the past couple years. But I do think I know who you're going to say is the most important based on your recent training camp preview. But I'm going to say the most important player that's going to probably need to step up and remain healthy. Health is going to be key. I think health is going to be a word that you're going to see a lot of times printed across the board. Who's staying healthy? Who it gets nicked up? Because I think the fans have a little bit of PTSD regarding who gets nicked up. We know that Malcolm Rodriguez and Aleem McNeil are going to start on PUP. You'll get that report officially later on this week. We clearly want to see how Aiden Hutchinson looks. But by all accounts, he's going to be Aiden Hutchinson. I think, me personally, the most important person that's going to be needing to stay healthy and show that he's somebody that can build confidence with the fan base and showcase early on. You're not going to see him at all probably in the preseason games, but I'm hoping to see that Marcus Davenport makes it through camp healthy. This is the guy that the team has invested in opposite of Aiden. And of course, Ahmed Hassanin is going to be developing. Elquidin Mohammed, Derek Barnes are going to be a lot of also players on the edge at times to do some things. You look at down the road, Makai Wingo. You look at the young defensive linemen like Josh Pascal and Levi, who are going to be shifted around. But the pass rush is going to come from, and the key player in my mind is Marcus Davenport. And everybody understandably is skeptical. I understand it. I respect it. But if he can stay healthy, he can showcase, hey, this is a player that you can bring back, the old Saints player there that was showcasing why he was a first-round pick. I think that'll give a lot of fans confidence that the defensive line, because I do think there's a heavy level of angst. The most that we probably seen for a defensive line that still got a lot of pressures last year but didn't get home. And it's true. Sacks, Detroit Lions fans dig sacks. And they don't dig pressure rate. They don't win, pass rush win rates. They don't dig that. They dig sacks. How many sacks does Marcus Davenport and Aiden Hutchinson combine for? If they can go for over 20, 21 plus combined, that'll be a very, very productive and worthwhile signing if Marcus Davenport can be around 5, 6, 7 sacks and Aiden around 15, 16. Hey, if you get up there over 25 combined, now you're talking business, and you can Brett Holmes can then thump his chest against one more time saying, hey, you guys didn't like Marcus Davenport? Look what I was able to get at a reasonable rate. Because if it doesn't happen, then we're all going to be trumpeting the drums like you could have had TJ Watt maybe for a second or third round pick. You could have had other players that were more established come in here. But in your mind, who is training camp most important for? I think I know who you're going to say.
Yeah, if you read my training camp preview on the quarterbacks, you'll know that my guy for training camp being the most important is Hendon Hooker. I think Hendon Hooker has a huge offseason or a huge training camp and ensuing offseason ahead of him. Because let's face it, Jared Goff is one of the most durable quarterbacks in the league, hasn't missed a game since 2021. Because of that, Hendon Hooker is not a guy who's logged a ton of game experience. So the training camp, the 4 preseason games, having that extra preseason game is huge for Hendon Hooker. It gives him more opportunities to log game reps and have a lot of evaluation from the coaches. I think that Hooker's issues last year stemmed from, just the overall nuanced understanding of the offense. I think that he was limited with issues by accuracy and timing at times this past year. He's got a new offensive coordinator he's working with this year. Hendon Hooker wasn't here when John Morton was on staff. Obviously, John Morton being here previously helps with the continuity of the offense, but I do think that there's going to be some changes within the scheme that Hendon Hooker is going to have to adapt to. And then overall, let's face it, he's heading into the 3rd year of his rookie deal. Next year will be the final year of his rookie deal. If Hendon Hooker wants to be a starter in the NFL, let's face it, it's probably not going to be in Detroit. Jared Goff starting year 1 of his contract extension this year, 4 years down the line. That does not line up with Hendon Hooker's timeline. So if Hooker wants to be a starter, what does he need to do? Go out and play well and generate good narratives in training camp, right? Look good in practice. And then when it's game time, go out there, be efficient with the offense, lead touchdown drives, throw touchdown passes, don't turn the ball over, and just look like he's got that feel down so that if the team has an issue, would be it this offseason, be it midseason, whatever, teams feel good about calling the Lions for Hendon Hooker. I think that is a win-win for both parties. I think that Hooker, obviously, you generate more interest in you being potentially a long-term starter, whether it's through a trade or when he hits free agency. And then it helps the Lions because it would drive up his trade value. And if you feel good about Jared Goff being the long-term guy, then Hendon Hooker is not somebody that you necessarily need to have on the roster a year, 2 years from now. Or he becomes a long-term backup and he's a guy you feel good about making a spot start every once in a while. So to me, this is a huge training camp for Hendon Hooker. Start having these good narratives, generate interest, and then play well when it's time to play well. That's what I'm looking for Hendon Hooker. This is a huge year for him, and I'm really, really intrigued by what he's going to bring to the table.
One of the great parts about training camp is regular access to Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell. And there's so many questions that I think people would have in regards to what position battle does he think is most competitive, where he thinks the team has grown the most, what he thinks of certain positions, the rookies, where he thinks the team is at health-wise. There's so much that Dan Campbell is going to address early on. So a lot of great reports will be coming from you and myself in regards to what Dan Campbell has been saying. And I'm very fascinated to kind of look at maybe the conversations maybe he's had with Alex Anzalone. That's going to be another big narrative coming in, is that, okay, is Alex Anzalone going to show up? I would be shocked if he didn't, but I do expect that if Alex Anzalone's there, I think within day 1 or 2, he's going to put it to rest. Like, okay, yeah, I want a contract, but it's not something that I'm going to be a distraction, and it's just the business side. I do not think that he's going to stand up there and be unprofessional about it. I would be shocked if he held out, but I do think, I'm curious maybe the process of what kind of conversations he's had. I think for me, I always kind of look at like Dan Campbell's overall goals and thoughts about Super Bowl or bust, or maybe what he thought about Jared Goff and the way in which Goff was portrayed. I think I think for me, my interest is usually heavily focused on Jared Goff, and it should always be. And he's being paid at the highest rate in the National Football League, among the top 10 highest paid. I know the market changes, but he's in that $48 to $51 million range. And I know it's quickly surpassing 60 with Dak Prescott and others as the market grows. But at the end of last year, clearly one of the questions I asked Dan directly was, okay, Jared Goff's a good quarterback. We all know what he can do. How does he take his game to the level where he wins as a Super Bowl quarterback? And that was a question I asked before the playoff game. And it was fascinating to go back and listen. If you go back to one of the final press conferences before the playoff game, that was the focal point, is, okay, if Jared Goff doesn't play well, this team can't win. And Dan Campbell said, look, we don't ride or die with one player. He just needs to do his job, deliver the football, be accurate. And unfortunately, what Dan Campbell said didn't happen against the Commanders. And so getting any insights regarding what Dan Campbell thinks about Jared Goff. And look, there's more question marks because he's got a new offensive coordinator. I think my early question directly is, why are you confident in Jared Goff? Like, why are you confident that you said, basically my question would be, you said in the Netflix special, Jared Goff's your quarterback and you probably will ride or die with him. Why for a quarterback that is yet to win a Super Bowl, do you believe that you can hitch your wagon to that guy? And I'm fascinated, and I'm pretty sure he'll talk about his growth and leadership and how much he's led the offense. So I'm fascinated just to see that little bit of a dynamic. And I wish maybe he would be forthright about it, but what's that dynamic where you give trust to somebody who still needs to accomplish that one final piece of his career? He's right there, but can he do it? It's so close. The guy that's really good, like we talk about in baseball, like the 4A player, a lot of tools, but can they be a championship level competitor? Now, Jared Goff is an NFL quarterback, clearly a top 10, ranked 8 this year, but I'm always fascinated what the head coach thinks about his quarterback and why is he trusting and not maybe even still at this point looking for next. You still could have, because the team could have drafted a young quarterback to compete with Jared Goff, as there were some talented quarterbacks that have been out there. So that's my thought on what I would ask Dan Campbell. Maybe it'll be something different about the defensive ends or the defense or the coaches, but there's a lot that will hopefully I get a chance to get one in there on Sunday and ask Dan Campbell a question. What do you think? If you had a chance to sit there, what would you ask Dan Campbell this week?
I think for me, it's the confidence in the depth. And the reason for that is their defense was so beat up last year, and it got to the point where they're pulling guys off of different practice squads and stuff like that. I want to know, how confident does he feel that if the Lions were in that situation again in 2025, how confident would he feel? How good would he feel about the potential of somebody like Ennis Rakestraw going out there and starting a game at cornerback, or having to turn to Avonte Maddox to either play safety or slot corner? Or, if Levi Onwuzurike has to go out there and play some defensive end, where's the confidence level? Grant Stewart at linebacker. You look further down the line. How much of a threat is Isaac Tesla to Tim Patrick right now when it comes to playing time? Craig Reynolds versus Sione Vaki. Who's going to be the running back 3? Who's going to be the guy that you turn to if somebody like Montgomery or Gibbs can't go out there on any Sunday? Where are we at with the depth? How good do we feel about some of these options who are lower on the depth chart? And then, like I talked about the quarterbacks, but Hendon Hooker, do you feel confident in Hendon Hooker going out there and starting a game for you right now? And that would maybe be something better to revisit at the end of training camp, but that's just the sort of stuff I'm looking for right now. Because let's face it, in the preseason, you're not going to see the Jared Goffs of the world. You're not going to see Penei Sewell. You're not going to see Gibbs or Montgomery. You're not going to see St. Brown. So who's next? We saw a Lions team last year that had to deal with, at any given time, 20-some dudes on injured reserve. So these are people who are going to have to play further down the depth chart. Is Grant Stewart going to start at linebacker? No. Is Grant Stewart going to play meaningful snaps for the Detroit Lions at some point at linebacker this year? Yeah, at some point he is. They've got a big safety battle going on right now. You talk about Kirby and Bryan are the two top safeties, and then it sounds like maybe Avonte Maddox is that third option. But you got 4 or 5 guys and that depth chart who are fighting for that 4th spot. Is it going to be Dan Jackson? Is it going to be somebody like undrafted free agent Ian Kennelly? Lawrence Strickland and Morris Norris both had meaningful moments last year where they had to go out and play snaps. Who is it? Who's that 4th safety if one of your top guys can't go? Rakestraw, I mentioned. Defensive line, Tyleek Williams, what's his role going to look like? Is he going to be somebody who's playing on every series? Is he going to be a first and second down guy? Is he somebody who, with McNeil out, is he somebody who's going to be lining up in that 3 technique shade? Like, these are all things that we're going to get to learn about throughout the preseason because the starters aren't going to be out there taking game reps. So to me, every time this time comes around on the calendar, I just get so excited about the depth battles and seeing guys who, there's going to be guys who have moments who aren't going to be on the team when September rolls around. But this is a job interview for these guys that are lower on the depth chart, not just for themselves, but for all the other 31 teams in the league. So just fascinated with the depth. I want to know all the answers. Who does he have where? And obviously you wouldn't get those answers on day one, but that's all stuff to follow along with as it progresses. And then early on, it's just about confidence. How good do we feel about the depth that we've brought in over the course of the offseason?
I think that you and I are probably in lockstep that there's a lot of developmental players, like you just mentioned, Ennis Rakestraw, a player that is a young player coming back from a rookie season that wasn't the best. But I think the 2 players that one from each side of the ball that are going to draw the most attention, Broderick Martin on defense and Giovanni Manu on offense. A couple of developmental players that I think need to take strides forward. Giovanni Manu has a chance potentially to be a backup tackle in the reserve rotation. He has a chance. I do think I'm curious to see how he's gained strength, what he's learned over the last 6 weeks, what he's learned over the entire offseason, because there might be a chance where Taylor Decker might have to deal with something or leave the game for a reason. And is he ready potentially? And I think Giovanni Manu will have a lot of opportunity to take snaps and probably be the protector of the blind side of Hendon Hooker. I'm curious to see where they put him, left tackle, right tackle. Does he even see any work at the guard position? I know he's too kind of big for guard, but I've seen him at tackle in a lot of offseason work. So I'm curious to see him. And then for Broderick Martin, clearly he's got to be consistent. He's got to be able to kind of battle, because I do think there's 3-4 interior linemen that are probably already ahead of him. And in a couple of the early 53-man roster projections that we've done at Lions on SI and elsewhere across the Lions landscape, you've seen Broderick Martin left off early 53-man projections. So 2 guys that I think are going to be very key to be able to have good training camps and showcase to the coaching staff, hey, they belong to be on the depth chart and maybe even move up.
Yeah, I think Manu's a great pick. That would have been somebody that I would have went with. I do think there's maybe even some potential for him to get some action at guard. I know Dan Campbell talked about it at the owners' meetings, that maybe guard was a potential avenue to get him on the field. I do think that swing tackle role is something that Dan Skipper's not going to let go of easy by any means. So I think for Manu, it's about adding tools to your tool bag. And if that means going to playing guard, gets you active on game day and gets you into the rotation, then I think maybe that's something he looks into. I think Giovanni Manu is a guy that really will have a lot of eyes on him after he was not active for any games last year. He's one to keep an eye on for sure. Ennis Rakestraw is another one. Rakestraw had a really good training camp, and there was a lot of conversation about him this time of year last year because he was having good days. I think he picked off a pass 3 straight days in team drills, just looked really comfortable out there. He told reporters at the end of the year he was lined up to start at the nickel cornerback position in week 2 before getting hurt in pregame warmups. And, obviously Deshane Townsend said that he's not going to be working inside at least to start the year. And so for me, it almost becomes a de facto position battle with Terrion Arnold. And there's a lot of optimism about Terrion Arnold right now. He has the mindset. He has the athleticism. He is a skilled cornerback. But if he doesn't take that leap, Ennis Rakestraw could be in the mix to get some playing time at the cornerback position opposite of DJ Reed. So he's another one that just has my attention right now. I'm really looking forward to getting to see him. And then another one, a job for the taking, is the running back 3. Craig Reynolds is a guy who's a veteran. He understands the scheme. He understands protections. He's not going to be somebody that's just going to be cast aside. But Sione Vaki caught the Lions' eye with his natural instincts when he got moved from safety to running back while at Utah. And having a year under his belt in the system to really learn playing the position, he could be a guy that the Lions give opportunities to because, like I said, they were intrigued early on. The natural ability he had caught their eye. Now, if we can add skill to that and nuance and technique, here's a guy who could be making a big impact for them in 2025. So those are 3 names I'm watching for sure.
No doubt about it. It's going to be fun. Lions on SI. Make sure you stay tuned. Now, in the offseason, there's been a lot of rankings, and I think one of the big ones is the one done by ESPN by the executives, scouts, and coaches. And so you've seen Jahmyr Gibbs earn his flowers. You've seen Jared Goff be ranked in the top 10. But one that caught the rankings across various platforms that's caught a lot of attention is the offensive line rankings. There's been this offseason debate that's been fun with the Eagles in regards to, is Penei Sewell better than Lane Johnson? Lane Johnson's north of 30. He's 35 years old. So he gets a lot of respect nationally for the work that he's did. Many people think he's more of an all-around tackle in regards to both pass rush and run blocking. But Penei Sewell has been ranked in the top 5 in a lot of offseason rankings. Gets his due. But what's wild is that, okay, Penei Sewell is ranked number 2. Tristan Wirfs is ranked number 1. And a lot of coaches and scouts maybe give the left tackle a little bit more credibility because of the work needed to protect the blind side of a quarterback. But look, everybody understands the skills that Penei Sewell brings to the table. Gave up less than 2 sacks last year. So, but what's wild is that there's been this heavy contingent of former linemen, and a couple of the Schwartz brothers have been vocal on social media saying, wait a minute, Penei Sewell's PR team should get a lot of money because there's been a lot of praise for a player that Mitchell Schwartz, a multiple-time Super Bowl winner and Pro Bowler, he feels that Penei Sewell, and I think he's kind of maybe highlighting how PFF ranks the grades in regards to run blocking and pass rush. He looks and sees that the pass blocking grade of Penei Sewell hasn't been that great, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I just think that the number that trumps it all is Penei Sewell doesn't give up a lot of sacks. So how does that equate to him not being as great of a pass blocker than others? Now, of course, there's nuance to that, and maybe sometimes there's pressure that gets through that disrupts plays that doesn't count as a sack against. But you're telling me, Mitchell Schwartz, that Penei Sewell you don't think is a top 2, 3 offensive lineman? You feel the need to critique his game? Remember, too, Penei Sewell can get better. He can work on these things. And I just think for the age alone, I think the ranking is fair. That Penei Sewell, maybe even you could argue, is number 1, all-around best right tackle and tackle in the league. So where do you think, why do you think Mitchell Schwartz is looking at maybe the PFF grades? And did you see that? You do a lot of film review. Did you see a lot of disruptiveness from the right tackle spot? Because I didn't get that sense. I thought the Lions and Jared Goff was kept pretty clean. I just don't see a world where someone goes publicly and says that Penei Sewell is overrated. I thought that was one of the wildest things I saw this offseason.
I agree. I do understand to a point where he's coming from, and obviously PFF shouldn't be taken as gospel. Sometimes it's just the eye test. Like sometimes there's different criteria that they use to grade out these games, and we use PFF a lot. I'm a big fan of what they do, but sometimes you just got to go by the eye test. And I'll tell you this: Penei Sewell, the way he gets downfield and blocks, his overall athleticism, just the sheer talent that he has. Like it's hard to overrate that. Like he's kind of a unicorn in that way, just with how agile he is, the pride he takes in blocking. And that's not to say other people don't do this, but I do think that there's things that he brings to the position that are just rare, regardless of who you are, what your name is, things like that. So I'm a huge fan of Penei Sewell. It's hard to say he's overrated. Like that is kind of a wild take, but that's also coming from somebody who played in the league. So he has his own nuance behind that, and he sees the game through a different lens as a former player as opposed to somebody like myself. But here's what I'll say. Like, I think that when you look at Penei Sewell and his ability to pass protect, it's not like a Lamar Jackson situation where he can have a bad rep and your quarterback can get out of the pocket and scramble and run for 20 yards and bail him out. Like, all due respect to Jared Goff, he's made some big scrambles in his career. Jared Goff's not that guy. He's not going to be a guy who's going to get out of the pocket and evade rushers and make huge plays to bail out somebody who misses an assignment or has a bad rep on the offensive line. So I think Penei Sewell, and saying that he struggles as a pass blocker or that he isn't as good of a pass blocker as some think. Like, I just don't agree with that. And I think that when you look at his numbers in his career and the low amount of sacks he's given up, man, I am a big fan of Sewell. And I do think that there's still some room to grow for him. I think that he can still unlock a little bit more of that athleticism in his pass protecting. But I do think that, 4 years into his career, he's been everything the Lions have needed him to be and more. And for that reason, I don't think you can say he's overrated. That's just my opinion.
It's wild. It's a wild thing to say. Hopefully it gives Penei Sewell motivation. I know he doesn't listen to outside noise, but the Schwartz brothers, my goodness, it's wild to look at, to think about Penei Sewell having critics. That's wild. There's always a critic somewhere, but it's good. Good for the Detroit Lions and good for the offensive line to have a little bit of additional motivation. Now, to close out the show, last week we reviewed, what's great is that soon we're going to have the all 21st century great memories of the last 25 years. Christian did a great job recapping the highlights, and probably we're going to skip the lowlights. I mean, we've covered a lot of things that didn't go well for the Lions, so we'll skip that. We'll just focus going into training camp on the great memories of the last 25 years with Stafford and Calvin Johnson and Dan Campbell's era. A lot of great things took place, and it's always good to go down memory lane. But you also, last week, we looked at the all 21st century team offense. All right, now turning our attention to the defense. Who were the best players on defense the last 25 years for the Detroit Lions? Who made the list for the all 21st century team for Lions on SI?
Yeah, I mean, we'll work backwards, and we'll start with a spoiler alert because we'll have this coming as you're listening to this. We're recording on Tuesday. We'll have the last piece of this, the safety position, coming on Wednesday, and that'll be Glover Quinn and Kirby Joseph. Quinn, obviously a veteran guy that the Lions brought in, wound up being a huge piece in their secondary. He was an incredible player for them. Kirby Joseph, obviously a younger guy, but the consistency he's shown throughout the first 3 years of his career, 4 interceptions, and then led the league in 2024, first team All-Pro. Didn't have anybody else in the position who earned those kind of accolades, so it's hard to leave a guy like him off the list. To the corner position, Darius Slay, obviously a really good career. The way things ended in Detroit, not ideal, but I do think that when you look overall at his career, hard to find somebody who had a better impact at the corner position than Darius Slay did during his time in Detroit. Obviously went on to win a Super Bowl with Philly last year, now in Pittsburgh. Trey Bly was his counterpart, another veteran guy who the Lions brought in, had a really successful tenure for Detroit. At the linebacker position, Alex Anzalone is a guy who I felt worthy of the honor just because of the impact he's made on the Lions defense, had back-to-back 100 tackle seasons, was on pace for another one in 2024 before the forearm injury. And then just his leadership as a defensive captain is going to make him go down as one of the core Lions of this era, this golden era of Lions football. And then DeAndre Levy had a really solid career for the Lions. Obviously, the injuries derailed what would look to be like a very promising career for DeAndre Levy, unfortunate way to end his career. And then Stephen Tulloch is another one who had a really solid time in Detroit. He had the injuries as well, but Tulloch was another guy that was a force at his best for the Lions defensively. And then we'll start with the edges. On the defensive line, I have Aiden Hutchinson as a guy who, if he stays on this trajectory, he's going to be one of those guys that can be looked at as a franchise all-timer. Obviously, this is a huge year for him coming off that injury to prove that the injury is not going to have any long-term effects on him. So eyes on him, but I think through the first 3 seasons of his career, he has that look of being a core edge rusher for the Lions over the past 25 years. I also went with Ziggy Ansah, another guy that kind of had his highs and lows a little bit, but early in his career, he was really, really solid, had a 17-sack season, and then, just injuries kind of caught up with him. And you kind of felt like he had more in the tank when the injuries started to come for him. So that was a guy that maybe, had a good career in Detroit, but I think maybe could have had a little bit more. And then at the defensive tackle position, Shawn Rogers was one. He was a second-team All-Pro in 2004, had that big pick 6 against the Broncos, which you may read about in our top 25 moments coming up a little bit later. And then, obviously, who can forget about Ndamukong Suh? Potential Hall of Famer, just announced his retirement this past weekend. Great career for him. Second overall pick for the Lions in 2010. Huge defensive force for the Lions. Obviously, things didn't work out in terms of keeping him with the organization long term, but really a fantastic career for Ndamukong Suh. Played his best ball during his 5 years with the Lions, and maybe somebody who we're talking about getting a gold jacket a little bit later on.
No doubt. Great work. I thought the All 21st Century Team, All Grit, was a great series that you put together and made the offseason fun. It went by fast, Christian. That was a fast 6 weeks. And we're now here at the point where training camp's going to start. And you make sure that the blessing is that we can fully confidently say that the Detroit Lions on SI is one of your trusted sites. Proof's in the pudding. 2019, we started. Christian hopped on just soon after and has been an asset to cover the Detroit Lions. And from my understanding, is a well-respected basketball coach who follows all the rules.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion, from what I'm hearing. I can admit that I tried to take money out of his pocket, but he definitely seems to be one of those kind of characters that keeps his money in his pocket, if you know what I'm talking about. But we'll see if he's able to invest in the team legally to be able to have a winning season. But we'll see. We'll report on how Christian's been doing as he takes forth new ventures, but he's still with Lions on SI, bringing you great coverage. Will be part of the Lone Wolves podcast in any capacity. I'm going to drag him. I don't care if he's an NBA coach. He still will be talking about the Detroit Lions. Hopefully him and I and Vito and Emmett will have an opportunity to cover a team that finally wins a Super Bowl. And then after that, we'll decide what his future will hold. But the podcast has been fun over the offseason. It's been fun to preview things and learn about the rankings and what people are saying. Again, thanks to everybody that's been inviting us, Detroit Lions on SI, to all your shows. It means a lot to me personally. And to see where we started to where we're going, it's going to be fun. And like I said, take a stop at Detroit Lions on SI YouTube channel. Subscribe. Again, the hub of the operation is the website, si.com/NFL/Lions, as you see on the scroll. At Detroit Podcast is a central place where you can get all the information about the YouTube shows, clips, information that you want to see, trusted insider analysis, and we got boots on the ground. I'll be there as many days as humanly possible. Eyes on the Detroit Lions, as they say, eyes on the prize, covering the Detroit Lions. And thanks, everybody. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe as we keep growing. And every time we fire up a new video, new podcast, it comes right to your door. Boom, Detroit Lions on SI has fired up some new information. And again, I humbly thank you guys, because Christian and I have been doing this together for several years now. And that's largely due to your continued support, interacting, retweeting our posts, letting us know what you think, questioning what you see from the fake AI world, and going, wait a minute, Doc, is this real? I thank you for coming to me as one individual that will bring you, real talk, honestly, from a perspective that I think everybody finds valuable. And that means a lot to us, and we're going to keep it going. Kick the door down, and Detroit Lions coverage is really something that I've made a priority in our sports career, and we're going to be around for the 2025 season. Maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the one that will end up being as fruitful as possible. This has been the Lone Wolves podcast. We'll be back next week, recapping the first few days of camp, risers, fallers, what we like. Even though it's not padded, I don't care. We're going to bring you insights and analysis. If you like it or you don't, I'm not going anywhere. I'm hungry, and Christian and I got more work to do, and we'll be bringing it each and every day. Detroit Lions on SI.